Yesterday, Donald Trump appeared to shock the world by announcing that he was going to do something that Trump and MAGA, under any other circumstances with any other politician, would declare communist Marxism. Trump said that he would sign an executive order that would magically cut the price of prescription drugs for the American people. He just wrapped up a press conference about this at the White House, and not only was he at times visibly confused, he actually nearly walked out of the room without signing the damn executive order in the first place. But there was an undercurrent of dishonesty and incongruity with Trump, the privileged capitalist who loves to enrich himself off the presidency, with doing something so egalitarian and socialist as, actually making things affordable for the American people. And I think there's a lot to unpack. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to play here. I want to start with a fun one, once again proving that Trump is really all about the PR and the press and being on camera and not actually about governing, because this isn't the first time he's done something like this. He announces an executive order and he runs his mouth and then he goes to leave the room without actually doing the governing, which is the signing of the executive order.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Mr. President, are you ready to impose sanctions on Russia if Putin doesn't?
They have to guide him back to dude, dumbass, you've got to go back and actually sign the executive order. I know you like to run your mouth, you not actually govern, but you need to. And it's ironic, too, that Trump was the one spreading the conspiracy theory just a couple of months ago that, crooked Joe Biden, he actually wasn't governing. Somebody with the auto pen was doing it. And Trump just reflexively doesn't know to sign documents, right? He just runs his mouth and then walks away and leaves the actual governance to other people. He might be telling on himself. Another moment in which Donald Trump, again, seemed visibly confused. I want you to note the phrasing of what he had to say. I mean, just unhinged shit from a guy who seems to be off his own meds.
I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who's a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman, seriously overweight, and he takes the fat shot drug.
What the fuck? A friend of mine, seriously overweight. He takes the fat shot drug. Wegovy, Ozempic. What are you talking about? Again, just brain leaking out of his ears. Okay. One last clip before we get into the substance of it, because of course making fun of Trump is we have to do it. It's good. It's good for the soul. It's good for the American people.
They'll have to do that. So for the first time in many years, we'll slash the cost of prescription drugs, and we will bring fairness to America. Drug prices will come down by much more, really, if you think 59. If you think of a drug that is sometimes 10 times more expensive, it's much more than the 59%. It depends on the way you want to analyze it, but in one way you could analyze it that way. But between 59 and 80, and I guess even 90%. So when I worked so hard in the first term, and if I got prices down, remember I was the only one to ever get prices down for a full year, but I'd get them down like 2%, and I thought it was like a big deal. Well, we're getting them down 60, 70, 80, 90%, but actually more than that if you think about it in the way mathematically.
He just, it's one syllable to the next. It's an adventure, I think, not just for us, but for him as well. He's like, I don't, like 1 nanosecond, like he's really grasping at it. Because if you think about it mathematically, numbers, you can analyze it one way, you can analyze it a different way. I'm the only one to get prices down. President Biden actually created the single greatest drug price reduction and negotiation tool in the terms of the Inflation Reduction Act, right? It allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices. It's supposed to continue under Trump, but who knows whether or not he'll continue it, because of course he hates Biden more than he loves the American people. So let's talk about this for a minute, okay? So making fun of Trump notwithstanding, I want you to consider a couple of things. Number one, this sounds unlike Trump, right? Oh, we're going to make things affordable for the American people. Well, you just talked about how things are going to be more expensive for the American people based on your trade war. You're enriching yourself off the presidency in the form of your meme coin, the $400 million Qatari luxury jet that you're about to receive. That was discussed during this press conference. We're going to do a separate video on that because his meltdown about that merits its own video. And it just really seems incompatible with the Republican Party platform, period. And again, I think there's more to it than that, because while Trump is talking about making things more affordable for the American people, his Republican Party, which is in control of the House and the Senate, and just unified government, period, on Mother's Day, they offered their spending bill, okay? The Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan congressional agency which evaluates budgets of Republicans and Democrats, right? This is what they said. I want you to know the staggering stuff. In total, CBO estimates that these three actions would increase the number of people without health insurance by at least 13.7 million people. In other words, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which is under Republican leadership at the moment because Republicans control Congress, is saying that Donald Trump is about to kick 14 million people off Medicaid. So I don't know if this is a distraction or what, and we have reason to believe that it might be, but just keep that in mind, okay? Keep that in mind as we start to play some of these other clips, starting with this one.
Being a little bit new to the government aspect of it is why doesn't somebody fight the drug price situation, meaning equalization? There's a term, it's called equalization. Nobody wants to mention that term. And I'm not knocking the drug companies. I'm really more knocking the countries than the drug companies, because
that also seems to be telling on itself, like, oh, it's not the pharmaceutical companies. It's other countries. It's Europe, right? And we're going to see some other clips. Again, first clue, like, oh, this isn't about pushing back on a greedy private sector. This is about going after other countries, which you're already doing in your trade war. Interesting. Here's another clip.
same drug that what we pay many, many times more for, and will no longer tolerate profiteering and price gouging from Big Pharma. But again, it was really the countries that forced Big Pharma to do things that, frankly, I'm not sure they really felt comfortable doing, but they've gotten away with it, these countries. European Union has been brutal.
So again, not big. He has prepared remarks he's reading off of. Okay, that we're going to go after price gouging in Big Pharma, which, by the way, sounds like a Democratic platform, doesn't it? What President Biden talked about, it's what Vice President Harris campaigned on, and Donald Trump and his MAGA cultists said, oh, that's price control. That's communism. That's Marxism. You going after drug companies? Oh, the government's going to go in and tell drug companies what they can or cannot do. And that's in Trump's prepared remarks. And I don't know if it's because he knows he's getting money from Big Pharma. Again, we'll come back to that. They almost like give the game away right here. I'm not sure what it is, if it's some sort of like Freudian, empathy, like, oh my God, I can't pick on multi-billion-dollar corporations. It's the Europeans, goddamn, it's the Europeans responsible for this. Again, telling on himself. Here's another clip.
Never had a president that had the courage to do this. And nobody knew the system like I do. I mean, I've gotten to know this system so well. And I don't think it's fair that it benefits Obamacare. Obamacare is a failure. It's not a good health care. It works. I made it work. I had an obligation to make it work, or an obligation to let it die. I chose that we had to make it work. I had to make it as good as possible.
So I will remind you, again, full of shit, Donald Trump campaigned on killing Obamacare. He tried to do it in 2017 when he was president and Republicans controlled the Senate and the House. It was because of John McCain and a couple of other defectors that Obamacare was saved. So Trump tried and failed to kill Obamacare, and now he wants you to give credit for him. Like, okay, I actually made Obamacare work by trying and failing to kill it. No, it's just you sucking at doing a terrible thing. It would have been bad to get rid of Obamacare, at least not without doing something more robust like single payer option, Medicare for all, something like that. Killing Obamacare and leaving the American people with nothing was a terrible idea. You tried to do it. It's just that you're really stupid and you suck at what you do and you failed. No, we shouldn't give you credit for that. And he also, during COVID, once he failed legislatively, even though he had the power, then tried to get the Supreme Court of the United States to strike down the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, during COVID. So he tried to kill it twice with two different branches. And one time was during a once-in-a-century pandemic. So Trump's trying to bullshit you, as he often does. He tried to do it on the campaign trail, too. President Obama had to make fun of him in multiple speeches, like, oh, he's trying to take credit for Obamacare. He tried to kill it. He's doing it again.
So we're going to maybe come up with something. I think this gives the Republicans a chance to actually do a health care that's much better than Obamacare and for less money, which if you guys would work on that along.
Remember, He said for years, oh, I've got a better idea. I've got a plan that's way better than Obamacare. And then, of course, he was mocked about it by Vice President Harris during that last debate, or during the one and only debate they had. And then he's like, well, I've got concepts of a plan. Dude, you were president for 4 years. You've been campaigning for the better part of a decade, and you don't actually have a plan. Now he's finally going to bring a plan about. Again, it seems to be a combination of trying to stick it to the Europeans and other countries while he's triggering a global trade war, protecting big pharmaceutical companies, or at least reflexively attempting to do so, trying to go after Obamacare again. It doesn't seem to be actually constructed in a way to deliver results to the American people. And again, we will deal with that. But here's another clip.
Accelerate these price restrictions and reductions. My administration will also cut out the middlemen. We're going to totally cut out the famous middlemen. Nobody knows who they are. Middlemen. I've been hearing the term for 25 years. Middlemen.
So he's referring to, he's supposed to know it better than anybody else, pharmacy benefit managers, PBM. Sorry, I had to think about that for a minute. Caffeine hasn't kicked in this morning. And they've been the target of President Biden's FTC. Lena Khan went after them because, I got to find the particular article here. I can bring it up. So it was left out of reforms, like PBM reforms were left out because of disagreements between House and Senate Republicans under President Biden. They would not lend the votes to otherwise pretty robust bipartisan attempts to, mitigate the harm to the pharmaceutical process by PBMs. God, PBMs. It was Republicans that tanked that provision in Democratic-led legislation because of disagreements between one chamber of Republicans and another. So this was attempted to be done. And while that was going on, President Biden's FTC and the executive branch went after pharmacy benefit managers as well. And again, we've got other clips to play. Let me get back to this, I guess, because here's, oh my gosh, here's RFK Jr., okay? Here's what RFK Jr. has to say.
President who is a man of his word, who has the courage. President Trump was taking money from the pharmaceutical industry, too. I think they gave you $100 million. Yeah. But he can't be bought.
He's a man of his word. He's the most prolific, inveterate liar in the history of American politics. And you just reminded the American people that Big Pharma paid him $100 million, which might explain why he's talking about protecting Big Pharma or going out of his way, because it's really not about pharmaceutical companies, it's about the Europeans. Okay, you've breathed further life into that and Trump's corruption. Here's another insane statement from RFK Jr.
And he is standing here for the American people. I don't know what, there's writers like Lord Elizabeth Warren or Robert Reich who are saying that President Trump is on this side of the oligarchs. There has never been a president more willing to stand up to the oligarchs than President Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, more willing to stand up to oligarchs than any other president. There's absolutely no evidence of that in his first administration or even in this one. And again, we'll get to the reasons why. RFK Jr., one last clip from him before we look at some of the sources here.
I have a couple of kids who are Democrats, are big Bernie Sanders fans. And when I told them that this was going to happen, they had tears in their eyes because they thought this is never going to happen in our lifetime.
It's probably not. And Trump and the Republicans have gone out of their way to make that very, very difficult. I will point out, since he mentioned Democrats, Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna has attempted to call Trump's bluff. He said, I'm willing to introduce Donald Trump's executive order exactly as written as legislation to be bipartisan and get something done for the American people. Any Republicans willing to co-sponsor? Then let's get Speaker Johnson to call a vote on it. I support Donald Trump's effort to ensure Americans do not pay more for drugs than those in other countries. But instead of an executive order that will get challenged again by Big Pharma, why not work with Bernie Sanders and me to make this law? Here's our legislation in a similar direction to what you propose. Let's work to get this through Congress. And he's right. Executive orders are much weaker than congressional statutory federal law. So a congressional law or congressional bill passed by both chambers, signed into law by the president, becomes federal statute. Much harder and much less likely to be overturned by the courts and successfully challenged than executive orders, which are by far the most vulnerable. So what Ro Khanna and others are saying is, okay, if you actually want to do this, and it's not a virtue signal to distract from your trade war, then you guys control Congress. We have attempted to do this under Democrats in the past. Republicans have stopped us. Now, if the Republican leader is saying, let's get it done, let's do it. Let's put pen to paper. You guys can make it happen. We'll give you the votes. And so far, no takers. Why is Trump doing this by executive order when his party controls both chambers? Interesting. Could it be a virtue signal? Maybe. Some other things to note. Trump is talking about how he's going to reduce prices for pretty much everybody. As the Washington Post notes, his proposal would likely only impact certain drugs covered by Medicare and given in an office. Think infusions that treat cancer and other injectables. And it could potentially save the government money. This is good. But what he's saying is he would he would cut drug prices 80% for the American people. It's limited. And again, he's doing it via executive order, the most vulnerable, the most susceptible to be successfully challenged by big pharma. Interesting stuff. I'm going to point this out here too. Let me bring this up. Because Trump signed an executive order back in, his first term, 2020. And the Associated Press points out, even a more narrow executive order faced hurdles, with a court order that blocked the rule from going into effect under President Biden's administration. The pharmaceutical industry argued that Trump's 2020 attempt would give foreign governments the upper hand in deciding the value of medicines in the United States, because Trump, again, tried briefly to use this as a campaign issue during the 2020 election year. Other things I want to point out here, because, again, I don't know what they're going to do with President Biden's price negotiation. Officials didn't say how this would affect the ongoing Medicare drug pricing negotiations, a policy signed into law by President Biden through the Inflation Reduction Act. In the final days of the Biden administration, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services announced the next round of drugs up for price negotiations. The first round of negotiations is estimated to save Medicare $6 billion in 2026 when the prices go into effect. But I wouldn't put it past Trump to just not enforce it because he doesn't want to give Biden the credit, or to try to take credit for price negotiations that Biden has already created. So I don't know what's going to come from this, folks. I really don't. But I just find it interesting that, kind of to recap here, going all the way back, at a time that Trump is personally enriching himself off the presidency, at a time when he is demanding that the American people basically assume financial hardship to facilitate his trade war, he's now saying, I'm going to sign an executive order that will cut prices for the American people by 80%. Now, Vice President Harris campaigned on cutting drug prices for the American people, but Trump and MAGA Republicans insisted that was price control and communism and Marxism. The government can't be going in there and, trying to unilaterally cut prices. Well, that's what Trump's saying he's going to do via executive order. So again, the hypocrisy is there, which suggests he's not serious about it, number one. Number two, executive orders are the most vulnerable to be challenged successfully and stopped by the court. So why not do it in legislation when your party controls both chambers of Congress and you have congressional Democrats publicly stating that they would back your effort? Why are you not going that route? It's almost like you're setting this up as a virtue signal to be challenged, so you can say, well, I tried, give me the credit, but Big Pharma, since you gave me $100 million, as RFK Jr. so gently points out, I have your back. I can have my cake and eat it too. I can virtue signal to try to make myself more popular, but we're not actually going to do anything, so your $100 million investment is secure with me. And Republicans, on top of all of this, are proposing a budget backed by Trump that would strip Medicaid from 14 million Americans. So if this doesn't pass the smell test to me, I love the notion of using the power of government to cut drug prices when and where we possibly can. This doesn't sound like what Trump actually intends to do, and I think we should be deeply suspicious of any effort to do so, because it sure seems like smoke and mirrors from a desperate man who is wildly unpopular. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.